There's a question most people never dare to ask themselves, not because they don't want to know the answer, but because the answer forces them to see the world as it really is, stripped of comfort and illusion. The question is this: are you living according to how the world should be, or how it actually is? Most people choose the fantasy. They cling to noble ideas about fairness, merit, and karma. They believe that good behavior guarantees good outcomes. They trust that truth wins in the end, that kindness is its own reward, that the righteous path leads to victory, and then reality crushes them. Because while they were busy being good, someone else was busy being effective. While they played by the rules they thought existed, someone else was rewriting those rules. While they waited for justice, someone else took what they wanted. This isn't cynicism, this is sight. 5 centuries ago, a man who served in the corridors of power wrote down what he saw, not what he wished to see, not what others wanted him to see, what he actually witnessed when kingdoms rose and fell, when leaders thrived or perished, when power changed hands in the dark machinery of human ambition. He wrote about the distance between appearance and reality, about why some leaders are feared and others forgotten, about why mercy can be cruelty and cruelty can be mercy, about why being good isn't the same as being strong. What he revealed made people uncomfortable then. It makes people uncomfortable now, because understanding these truths means accepting that the world operates on principles that don't care about your morality, your intentions, or your dreams. You're watching The Book Sanctuary. There are rules that govern power, not the rules written in constitutions or preached in speeches, but the ones that actually determine who rises and who falls. These rules don't care about your ideology. They don't distinguish between the virtuous and the corrupt. They simply are. Most self-help tells you to be yourself, to follow your heart, to trust in the universe. But what if being yourself gets you destroyed? What if following your heart leads you into a trap? What if the universe is neutral, uncaring, and brutal? This is where most wisdom fails you. It prepares you for a world that doesn't exist. What we're exploring here isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming aware. It's about seeing the invisible architecture of power that surrounds you, understanding how it operates, and learning to navigate it without being destroyed by your own naivety. Every interaction you have carries undercurrents of power. Every friendship, every business deal, every romantic relationship, every family dynamic. Some people instinctively understand these currents. Most people don't, and they spend their lives confused about why things never work out the way they imagined. This knowledge isn't about manipulation for manipulation's sake. It's about survival. It's about effectiveness. It's about understanding that in the real world, intentions mean nothing and results mean everything. The ideas we're about to explore have been suppressed, criticized, and condemned because they reveal uncomfortable truths about human nature. But truth doesn't need your approval. It simply waits for you to recognize it. Let's begin. Chapter 1, The Illusion of Should. You've been lied to about how power works, not by any single person, but by the entire scaffolding of civilization that needs you to believe in fairness, justice, and eventual cosmic balance. Because if everyone understood how power actually operates, the whole system would collapse into chaos. So they teach you myths. They tell you that hard work guarantees success, that honesty is always the best policy, that good people win in the end, that karma is real and the universe keeps score. These aren't just incorrect, they're dangerous. Because while you're living according to how things should be, others are living according to how things are, and that gap, that distance between your ideals and reality is where you get devoured. Consider this: every major institution that teaches you morality benefits from your compliance. Schools need you to follow rules. Employers need you to accept hierarchy. Governments need you to trust authority. Religions need you to believe in divine justice. None of them benefit from you understanding raw power dynamics. So they wrap everything in comfortable narratives. They tell you the meek shall inherit the earth while the aggressive inherit it right now. They tell you patience is a virtue while the impatient seize opportunities before you even notice they exist. They tell you to be nice while others are being effective. Here's what actually matters: outcomes. Not intentions, not effort, not righteousness, outcomes. You can have the purest heart and the noblest goals. But if you lack power, you have nothing. You can be morally superior in every way. But if you're powerless, your morality dies with you, unremembered and irrelevant. This is the first brutal truth: the world rewards power, not virtue. And power doesn't care how you got it. Think about the people you know who succeeded. Really think about them. Were they the kindest, the most honest, the most deserving, or were they the ones who understood what moves to make, when to be visible, when to be invisible, who to align with, who to distance from, when to strike, and when to wait? You already know the answer. You've just been trained not to acknowledge it. The shift from should to requires killing a part of yourself. The part that needs the world to be fair, the part that believes in cosmic justice, the part that thinks your goodness will be recognized and rewarded. That part of you is a liability, not because goodness is bad, but because believing the world operates on goodness gets you destroyed. You can be good if you want, but you must be powerful first, because without power, your goodness is meaningless. Chapter 2: The Fortress Within. When someone new acquires power, their first instinct is usually wrong. They want to be liked. They want to prove they're different from the previous regime. They want to show they're fair, open, and generous. They believe that kindness will win loyalty. This is how they lose everything, because the people who helped them rise did so expecting rewards. The people who were comfortable under the old system resent the change, and the masses are simply watching to see who's actually in control. Giving generously from a position of uncertainty is perceived as weakness. Making promises you may not keep destroys trust. Trying to please everyone guarantees you please no one. Here's what you must understand about power transitions. Whether you're starting a new job, entering a new relationship, or taking on any new position of authority, people are testing you. They're not consciously aware they're doing it most of the time, but they are. They're pushing boundaries, questioning decisions, seeing how far they can go. They're determining whether you're solid or whether you can be bent. The foundation must be established immediately and unmistakably. This doesn't mean being tyrannical, it means being clear. It means making it known what you will and won't accept. It means following through on consequences without hesitation or apology. It means never making threats you won't execute. People respect boundaries they can't cross more than kindness they can exploit. Think about relationships you've seen fall apart. How many died because someone was too nice, too accommodating, too afraid to set standards? They gave and gave, thinking generosity would create devotion. Instead, it created contempt. Respect isn't given to those who try to earn it through kindness. It's given to those who demand it through consistency. The fortress you must build isn't made of stone. It's made of principles you won't compromise. It's made of standards you enforce without exception. It's made of words that match your actions so perfectly that people stop testing you because they know exactly what will happen. Most people build walls made of wishes. They hope people will respect them. They believe others will reciprocate their kindness. They trust that being vulnerable will create connection. And then they wonder why people walk all over them. The strong don't hope. They establish, they don't trust blindly, they verify, they don't make themselves vulnerable, they make themselves valuable. Your fortress isn't about keeping people out. It's about ensuring that anyone who enters knows the terms of entry and respects them absolutely. Those who can't or won't respect your terms have no place inside your walls. This seems harsh until you realize that most of your problems come from people you allowed too close, too quickly, with too few requirements. Chapter 3: The Economy of Fear and Loathe. If you had to choose between being feared or being loved, which would you pick? Most people immediately choose love. It feels better. It aligns with how they want to see themselves. It seems more sustainable and human. And that's exactly why they never acquire real power. Love is conditional, love is changeable, love depends on continued performance and meeting expectations. Love can turn to hate overnight. Love makes people expect things from you. Love creates obligations you didn't agree to. Fear is much more reliable, not the fear of random cruelty. That creates rebellion. But the fear of consequences, the fear of your consistency, the fear that you mean what you say and will do what you promise. This kind of fear is actually respect wearing a mask. Think about the people in your life you respect most, the ones whose words carry weight, the ones you wouldn't dare disappoint or deceive. Buried beneath your respect is a form of fear, isn't it? The fear of losing their regard, the fear of facing consequences, the fear of their judgment. That's what you're building toward. When people love you, they expect you to be soft with them. They expect special treatment. They expect you to break your own rules for them. And when you don't, that love curdles into resentment. But when people respect you through a clear understanding of consequences, they know exactly where they stand. There's no confusion, no hurt feelings from unmet expectations, just clarity. You want to be loved. Be loved by a few who truly know you. But be feared by everyone who depends on you maintaining standards. Here's the paradox that destroys most leaders trying to be liked, makes you unlikable. When you bend your principles to gain approval, people sense your weakness. They may smile at you, but they don't respect you. They may agree with you to your face, but they mock you behind your back. The person who maintains standards, regardless of popularity, becomes magnetic. People might not like them in the moment, but they respect them. And respect outlasts affection every single time. Consider your own behavior. When have you respected someone more? When they were kind to you, or when they held you to a higher standard? When they let things slide, or when they demanded excellence? When they were your friend, or when they were your benchmark? The answer reveals what others feel about you when you choose approval over standards. Love creates dependencies. People who love you expect things. They want your time, your resources, your energy, your attention, and the moment you can't or won't provide these things, their love wavers. Fear creates independence. People who fear your standards don't burden you with expectations. They perform or they face consequences. Simple, clean, effective. This doesn't mean you should be cruel. Cruelty for cruelty's sake is weakness disguised as strength. But it does mean you should be unmovable. Your word should be law. Your standards should be absolute. Your consistency should be terrifying. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because anything less gets you destroyed. Chapter 4. The Performance of Power. Power isn't just about what you do. It's about what people believe you'll do. Perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. This is the secret most people never grasp. They think being powerful is enough. It's not. You must appear powerful. And those two things are not the same. Someone who is secretly powerful but appears weak will be treated as weak. Someone who appears powerful but is secretly weak might maintain their position for years through appearance alone. This is why symbols matter, why demonstrations matter, why public perception matters more than private truth. Every king understood this. The crown wasn't about decoration. The throne wasn't about comfort. The ceremony wasn't about tradition. It was all about creating an image of power so overwhelming that rebellion seemed impossible. You're doing the same thing every day, whether you realize it or not. How you dress, how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you respond to challenges, how you handle disrespect, how you allocate your time, all of it broadcasts signals about your power level. And people are reading those signals constantly. When someone challenges you and you hesitate, they learn you're weak. When you make a threat and don't follow through, they learn to ignore your future threats. When you're inconsistent, they learn to test you constantly because they never know which version of you they'll get. But when your response to disrespect is immediate and proportional, people learn. When your promises and threats materialize exactly as stated, people learn. When your standards don't shift based on mood or circumstance, people learn. They learn that you're real, and real power is the only kind that matters. Here's what's critical. The performance of power must be authentic. You can't fake this long term. If you make yourself seem more powerful than you are, eventually someone will test your limits and discover the truth. When that happens, your entire position collapses. So the performance isn't about pretending to be powerful, it's about ensuring that your actual power is visible, understood, and unambiguous. Think about the times you've seen someone in authority get challenged. What determined the outcome wasn't necessarily who was right. It was who seemed more certain, who seemed more committed, who seemed more willing to escalate. Certainty is a weapon. Doubt is a vulnerability. Hesitation is an invitation to attack. The performance of power also means knowing when to demonstrate it and when to conceal it. Constant displays of dominance make you predictable and exhaust your resources. But never displaying power makes people forget you have it. Strategic demonstration is key. You don't punish every small infraction. That's tyranny. But you punish certain infractions publicly and severely, making an example that prevents future infractions. This is why consequences must be both inevitable and visible. Private punishment doesn't educate the masses. Public consequences do. You're not being cruel. You're being educational. You're teaching everyone what the boundaries are through clear demonstration. One highly visible consequence prevents 100 future violations. Most people fail at this because they either overreact to everything, which exhausts them and makes them seem unstable, or they underreact to everything, which makes them seem impotent. The master of power picks their moments. They let small things slide without comment. Then, when the right moment arrives, they respond with such decisive force that everyone understands the lesson. Chapter 5, The Trap of Generosity. Generosity seems like a virtue. In the right context, with the right people, it can be. But generosity from a position of power is usually a mistake. Here's why: when you're generous with those who depend on you, you create an expectation of continued generosity. Your gift becomes their right. Your exception becomes their rule. Your kindness becomes their entitlement. And the moment you stop being generous, they hate you more than if you'd never been generous at all. This is the trap. You think you're building loyalty through giving. You're actually building resentment through creating expectations you can't maintain forever. Consider a leader who gives bonuses freely, makes exceptions constantly, and shows flexibility at every turn. Their people don't become more loyal, they become more demanding, because generosity signals abundance, and abundance signals that you can afford to give more. Every gift you give raises the baseline expectation. Every exception you make becomes the new standard. Every time you bend, people learn that you can be bent further. The alternative isn't stinginess, it's strategic allocation. When you give rarely, each gift carries immense weight. When you make exceptions selectively, each exception is treasured. When you're known for being firm, your flexibility in the right moment creates deep loyalty. This is the paradox: the less often you give, the more grateful people are when you do. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever had someone in your life who gave you things constantly? Did that generosity create the gratitude they expected? Or did it become something you simply came to assume? Now think about someone who rarely gave anything, but when they did, it meant something.
Which gift do you remember more?
The generous ruler starts with everything and ends with nothing. The strategic ruler maintains power by understanding that resources, whether money, time, or favor, are tools to be deployed precisely, not scattered broadly. This applies everywhere. In business, the boss who approves every request becomes the boss nobody respects. In relationships, the person who always accommodates becomes the person who's always exploited. In friendship, the one who's always available becomes the one who's never valued. Scarcity creates value. Abundance creates contempt. Your attention is a resource. Your time is a resource. Your energy is a resource. Your approval is a resource. The moment you give these freely, they become worthless. But when people have to earn them, when access to you requires meeting standards, when your approval means they've actually achieved something, suddenly every interaction matters. The trap of generosity also lies in its motivation. Most people are generous because they want to be liked. They want appreciation. They want others to see them as good. This neediness makes their generosity worthless, because it's not actually about the recipient. It's about the giver's need for validation. True strategic giving requires neither appreciation nor recognition. It's calculated to produce specific outcomes, maintain specific balances of power, or create specific obligations. When you understand this, you stop being hurt when your generosity isn't appreciated because you never expected appreciation in the first place. Chapter 6, The Danger of Middle Ground. There's a comfortable position most people occupy in every conflict, the middle ground. They try to please both sides. They try to stay neutral. They try to be fair to everyone. This position feels safe. It feels moral. It feels wise. It's actually a disaster. Because when you try to please everyone, you please no one. When you try to stay neutral, both sides see you as the enemy. When you try to be fair to everyone, nobody trusts you to be on their side when it matters. The middle ground is where power goes to die. Every significant moment in your life will require you to take a side, to commit fully to a position, to risk being wrong in order to be effective. And the people who succeed are those who pick their side and commit to it completely, not those who hedge their bets. Consider any situation where you tried to make everyone happy. How did it turn out? Did your diplomacy create gratitude, or did it create the suspicion that you can't be counted on? Trying to serve two masters doesn't mean you serve them both. It means you serve neither, and both will abandon you the moment they need someone who's actually on their side. This is especially true in any competitive situation. In business, in politics, in social dynamics, in any arena where different factions exist, neutrality is interpreted as weakness. Because powerful people don't trust the neutral. They trust those who have committed, who have taken risks, who have made themselves vulnerable by choosing a side. The middle ground also prevents you from being memorable. The person who stakes out extreme positions, whether you agree with them or not, is remembered. The person who tries to find the reasonable center is forgotten. Extremity creates identity. Moderation creates invisibility. Now, this doesn't mean you should be extreme for the sake of extremity. It means that when the moment comes to commit, you must commit fully. When the time comes to choose, you must choose decisively. When power requires you to take a stand, you cannot waffle. Half measures achieve nothing. Partial commitments inspire no one. Tentative actions produce tentative results. The world belongs to those who go all in, not those who keep one foot in reserve. Think about the leaders you respect most. Are any of them known for their moderation, for their careful middle positions, for their diplomatic hedging? Or are they known for their clarity, their commitment, their willingness to be definitively for or against something? The middle ground is also dangerous because it requires constant recalibration. You're always balancing, always adjusting, always trying to keep everyone happy. This is exhausting and makes you reactive rather than proactive. But when you pick a side and commit to it, your path becomes clear. Your decisions become easier. Your identity becomes stronger. You stop worrying about offending people because you've already decided who you stand with and who you stand against. This clarity is power. Most people avoid taking stands because they fear being wrong. But being definitively wrong is better than being indefinitely ambiguous, because even when you're wrong, people know where you stood. They know you had the courage to commit. They know you're someone who acts rather than deliberates endlessly. And that quality, that willingness to commit even with imperfect information, is what separates leaders from followers. It's chapter 7, the timing of force. There are moments that define everything that comes after. Moments when decisive action shapes the entire future. Moments when hesitation costs you everything. Most people miss these moments, not because they don't see them, but because they can't bring themselves to act. They overthink, they consider consequences, they worry about perception, they hope the problem will resolve itself. And while they're deliberating, the window closes. The master of power recognizes these moments instantly and acts without hesitation. This is one of the most difficult skills to develop because everything in your conditioning tells you to be cautious, to gather more information, to consider all sides, to be fair and measured. But the moments that matter don't wait for you to be comfortable. Think about the times you knew something had to be done. A conversation had to be had. A person had to be confronted. A decision had to be made. A problem had to be addressed. But you waited. You told yourself you needed more time, more information, more certainty. And by the time you finally acted, the situation had worsened. The problem had metastasized, the opportunity had passed. Your delayed action came across as weak rather than decisive. The timing of force is everything. Too early, and you seem rash, unstable, trigger-happy. Too late, and you seem weak, indecisive, reactive. The skill is recognizing the precise moment when action is required and executing without internal debate. This applies to everything. In negotiations, there's a moment when you must walk away. In relationships, there's a moment when you must set a boundary. In business, there's a moment when you must fire someone, pivot strategy, or double down. That moment announces itself not with trumpets, but with a feeling, a knowing that this is it. This is when you act or lose forever. Most people ignore this feeling. They rationalize it away. They tell themselves to give it one more day, one more chance, one more conversation, and every delay weakens their position. The person who acts at the right moment doesn't have more information than you. They don't have more certainty. They simply have more courage and better instincts. And those instincts are developed through experience and through trusting that internal knowing that says now. There's also a critical principle here. When you decide to use force, use it completely. Half measures create more problems than they solve. Tentative corrections don't correct anything. Partial consequences don't change behavior. If you're going to fire someone, fire them cleanly. If you're going to cut someone off, cut them off completely. If you're going to enforce a boundary, enforce it absolutely. If you're going to make an example, make it memorable. Gradual escalation just gives people time to prepare, to resist, to undermine you. Decisive action ends things before resistance can organize. This is why the person who acts swiftly and completely often faces less total resistance than the person who acts slowly and incrementally, because swift action creates shock, acceptance, and new reality. Slow action creates prolonged conflict, resentment, and opposition. The timing of force also means knowing when not to use force, when to let things resolve themselves, when to allow consequences to teach lessons without your intervention, when to step back and let failure do the teaching. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every slight needs to be addressed. Not every challenge needs to be met with force. But the ones that matter, the ones that define your position and establish your standards, those must be handled with perfect timing and overwhelming force. Think Chapter 8, The Architecture of Loyalty. Loyalty is one of the most misunderstood concepts in power dynamics. Most people think loyalty is something you inspire through kindness, fairness, and reciprocal goodness. Those people are constantly betrayed. Real loyalty doesn't come from being nice. It comes from creating a situation where betrayal is more costly than faithfulness. This sounds cynical until you look at every stable power structure in history. Loyalty existed not because everyone loved each other, but because the consequences of disloyalty were clear, immediate, and devastating. You don't build loyalty through trust. You build it through structure. Consider the people in your life you consider loyal. Are they loyal because they're good people who would never betray you? Or are they loyal because doing so would cost them something they value, your friendship, your resources, your approval, your network, your protection? True loyalty is economic. It's a calculation. And the person who understands this builds relationships where the math always favors faithfulness. This doesn't mean you can't have genuine emotional connections, but it does mean you don't rely on emotional connections alone to keep people aligned with your interests. The architecture of loyalty has several components. First, you must be valuable enough that losing access to you is genuinely costly. If you provide nothing that can't be easily obtained elsewhere, you have no leverage for loyalty. Second, you must know enough about your allies that their betrayal would be mutually destructive. This is why people share secrets, not to build intimacy, but to build insurance. Third, you must have the capacity and will to punish betrayal so severely that the risk outweighs any potential gain. This doesn't mean you're cruel. It means you're known for being someone who never forgives betrayal and always extracts a price. Fourth, you must reward loyalty consistently enough that people see the long-term benefits of staying aligned with you. None of this requires you to be evil. It just requires you to be strategic about who you trust and why they can be trusted. Most betrayals happen not because people are inherently disloyal, but because the situation made betrayal more attractive than loyalty. They saw an opportunity. The cost seemed manageable. The benefit seemed worth it. Your job is to ensure that calculation never makes sense. This is why you must be selective about who you bring close. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone has earned the right to be in your inner circle. And the moment someone shows they're calculating their options, they've revealed they cannot be trusted. The truly loyal don't calculate, because you've made their position so valuable, so clear, and so mutually beneficial that calculation isn't necessary. There's also the matter of perceived loyalty versus actual loyalty. Many people mistake obedience for loyalty. They mistake compliance for commitment. They mistake fear for faithfulness. These are not the same thing. The person who obeys out of fear is waiting for the moment your power weakens. The person who complies without commitment is simply biding their time. The person who acts faithful while calculating is your future betrayer. Real loyalty is tested not during good times, but during crises, when your power wavers, when you're vulnerable, when betraying you would be easy and beneficial. The ones who stay then, who defend you then, who remain committed then, those are your actual allies. Everyone else is just along for the ride and will jump ship the moment conditions change. Chapter 9, the weapon of reputation. Your reputation precedes you. It opens doors before you arrive. It closes doors before you knock. It determines what opportunities come to you and what threats people dare to present. Your reputation is your most powerful weapon, and most people have no idea how to forge it. They think reputation is about being liked, about having a good name, about what people say about you at parties. They manage their reputation through pleasantness and agreeability. This creates a reputation for being pleasant and agreeable, which is worthless. The reputation that matters is the one that makes people think twice before crossing you. The one that makes them carefully consider their words before speaking to you. The one that precedes you like a force field, shaping interactions before they even begin. This reputation isn't built through bragging. It's built through consistent demonstration of certain qualities that make you formidable. First, you need a reputation for following through on what you say. If you say something will happen, it happens. If you promise something, you deliver. If you warn someone, the warning materializes exactly as described. This creates the reputation of being someone whose words matter, whose promises are reliable, whose threats are real. Second, you need a reputation for not forgetting. People need to know that you remember who helped you and who hindered you, that you maintain a long memory for both loyalty and betrayal. That time doesn't erase debts or offenses. This creates the reputation of being someone who should not be crossed casually, because you will remember. Third, you need a reputation for competence, for getting results, for being effective, for solving problems that others can't solve. This makes you valuable, which makes you powerful. Fourth, you need a reputation for being selective, for not being available to everyone, for having standards that most people don't meet. This creates scarcity and desire. These reputations compound over time. Each instance where you demonstrate these qualities reinforces the reputation. Each time someone tests you and discovers your reputation is accurate, they tell others. Each interaction becomes marketing for future interactions. But reputation is also fragile. One major inconsistency can damage years of careful construction. If you're known for following through and then fail to follow through once, people remember that failure more than all the successes. This is why you must be meticulous about what you commit to. Don't make promises you might not keep. Don't make threats you might not execute. Don't create expectations you might not meet. Better to underpromise and overdeliver than the reverse. Your reputation also needs to be calibrated to your actual power. If your reputation exceeds your power, eventually someone will test you and discover the gap. When that happens, your reputation collapses entirely, so the reputation you build must be authentic. It must be based on demonstrated capabilities, not imagined ones. It must be tested regularly and proven consistently. There's also the matter of controlling the narrative. People will talk about you whether you want them to or not. The question is whether you're shaping what they say or allowing others to define you. This doesn't mean you comment on every rumor or defend yourself against every criticism. Often, silence is more powerful than explanation, but it does mean you strategically demonstrate qualities you want to be known for and allow those demonstrations to speak for you. The best reputation is the one where people who've never met, you know exactly what to expect when they interact with you, where your reputation provides such clear boundaries and expectations that most conflicts are prevented before they begin, because people already know what will happen if they test you. Chapter 10. The illusion of mercy. Mercy is treated as a virtue in most moral systems. To be merciful is to be noble, compassionate, evolved. In power dynamics, mercy is often a mistake that costs you everything. Here's why. When you show mercy to someone who wronged you, you're not just letting them off. You're teaching everyone watching that wronging you has no real consequences. You're demonstrating that your threats are empty. You're proving that you value being seen as merciful more than you value maintaining standards. And every person who sees this learns that you're soft. The next person who wrongs you won't fear consequences because they saw you give mercy. The calculation changes in their mind. The risk seems manageable. Your boundaries seem negotiable. This is how leniency compounds into disaster. Now, this doesn't mean you should be gratuitously cruel. There's a vast difference between appropriate consequences and excessive punishment. The goal isn't to maximize suffering, it's to maintain credibility. When someone violates your trust, breaks their word, or disrespects your boundaries, the response must be proportional but inevitable. Not excessive, but absolute. They must face the consequences you promised without exception or excuse. This is actually more merciful in the long run than inconsistent punishment, because when consequences are clear and inevitable, people make better decisions. They know the price of certain actions and can choose accordingly, but when you're merciful, when you give second chances and make exceptions, you create confusion. People don't know what will actually happen if they cross you. So they test, they push, they cross boundaries to see if this time is the time you'll actually follow through. Your mercy has trained them to gamble with your boundaries. Consider this: the general who executes deserters creates an army that doesn't desert. The parent who follows through on consequences raises children who respect boundaries. The leader who never wavers from their standards builds an organization that functions. The merciful general has an army of deserters. The lenient parent raises entitled children. The flexible leader builds a dysfunctional organization. Which approach is actually more merciful in its total outcomes? There's also a deeper issue here. When you show mercy, you're often doing it for yourself, not for the person you're showing mercy to. You want to feel good about yourself. You want to avoid being seen as harsh. You want to believe you're above such base things as punishment and consequences. But this is vanity disguised as virtue. You're prioritizing your self-image over the health of your entire system. Real leadership sometimes requires you to be the bad guy, to be the one who enforces consequences even when it feels harsh, to maintain standards even when it would be easier and more comfortable to let things slide, because you understand that your personal comfort matters less than the integrity of the whole structure. The person who never shows mercy is predictable. People know where they stand. They know what to expect. They make informed decisions about whether to test boundaries. The person who shows mercy sometimes is random. People never know what will happen, so they keep testing, keep pushing, keep hoping this time will be the time you're merciful. Your inconsistency creates more conflict than your harshness ever would. Now, there is a place for mercy, but it's strategic, not emotional. You show mercy when doing so serves a larger purpose, when it creates loyalty from someone valuable, when it demonstrates your power by showing you can afford to be generous, when the person truly didn't understand the rules and now does. But you never show mercy out of weakness, out of fear of being disliked, out of discomfort with consequences, because that mercy will cost you everything. In Chapter 11, the necessity of appearing virtuous, here's a paradox that most people can't reconcile. You don't need to be virtuous, but you absolutely must appear virtuous, because people judge you based on perception, not reality. They make decisions about you based on what they think you are, not what you actually are. And perception is shaped by how you present yourself, not by your private morality. This doesn't mean you should be evil while pretending to be good. It means you must understand that in the arena of power, appearance matters more than essence. The leader who is genuinely virtuous but appears corrupt will be treated as corrupt. The leader who is genuinely corrupt but appears virtuous will be treated as virtuous, and treatment determines outcomes. So you must manage appearance carefully and deliberately. This means you never explain your strategic cruelty. You never justify your hard decisions by revealing they were strategic. You never let people see the calculations behind your actions. When you must do something that seems harsh, you frame it in terms of necessity, principle, or the greater good. Not because you're lying, but because explaining that it was strategically optimal makes you appear manipulative. People want to believe their leaders operate from virtue, even when they benefit from their leaders' strategic thinking. So you give them what they want, the appearance of virtue, the framing of noble intention, the language of higher purpose. Meanwhile, you do what's actually effective. This split between appearance and reality is uncomfortable for most people. It feels dishonest. It feels manipulative. It violates their need to be authentic. But authenticity and power is a luxury that costs you everything. Because the moment you're fully transparent about your calculations, people see you as Machiavellian in the worst sense. They distrust you, they fear you. Not because of what you do, but because you admitted you were thinking strategically. So you must be strategic while appearing natural, calculated while appearing spontaneous, political while appearing principled. The virtues you must appear to have are specific: integrity, fairness, compassion, wisdom, and strength. People want their leaders to embody these qualities, even if they privately benefit when their leader violates them. So you speak the language of these virtues, you frame your decisions in these terms, you demonstrate these qualities when the cost is low and the audience is large. But privately you operate on effectiveness, on what actually works, on results rather than righteousness. This duality is the essence of power, the public face and the private calculation, the noble framing and the strategic thinking, the moral language and the practical action. Those who can't maintain this split fail. Either they become actually virtuous and get destroyed by those who aren't, or they become openly calculating and get destroyed by those who are offended by the honesty. The master walks the line, appears virtuous enough to maintain support, calculating enough to achieve outcomes, never so honest about their methods that people become uncomfortable. This also means you must be careful about what you say in private, because private statements have a way of becoming public. And once people hear you admit that something was strategic rather than principled, they question everything. So even in private, even with trusted allies, you maintain the framing of virtue while executing strategy. This seems exhausting. It is. But it's also the price of power. You don't get to be authentic and effective. You have to choose. And if you choose authenticity, you're choosing to be powerless. The person who refuses to manage appearance is the person who gets to maintain their pure self-image while achieving nothing. The person who masters appearance is the person who actually shapes reality while maintaining the support necessary to do so. Chapter 12, the mathematics of allies. Every relationship is a calculation, not because people are cold or mechanical, but because resources are finite and choices have costs. You have limited time, energy, attention, and trust to allocate. Every person you include in your life requires an investment. The question is whether that investment generates returns. Most people avoid thinking this way. They find it uncomfortable to view relationships through economic terms. They want to believe in unconditional friendship, selfless loyalty, and bonds that transcend calculation. This idealism leaves them surrounded by people who drain them, use them, and ultimately betray them, because while they were avoiding calculation, everyone else was calculating. The strategic approach to relationships doesn't make you cold. It makes you effective. It ensures that the people in your life actually add value, rather than simply consuming it. Here's how you evaluate an ally. What do they provide? What do they cost? What happens if they turn against you? What happens if you lose them? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're necessary questions. An ally who provides little and costs much is a liability. regardless of how much you like them. An ally who provides much and costs little is valuable, regardless of whether you enjoy their company. The person who can separate emotional comfort from strategic value builds a network of actually useful relationships. The person who can't builds a network of pleasant but useless connections. Now, this doesn't mean you should only associate with people who are useful. It means you should be clear about which relationships are strategic and which are personal. And you should never confuse the two. Your personal relationships can be emotional, reciprocal, and generous. Your strategic relationships should be calculated, balanced, and clear. The mistake most people make is treating strategic relationships like personal relationships. They bring emotion, expectation, and need to relationships that should be transactional. Then they're hurt when those relationships don't provide emotional fulfillment. Or they treat personal relationships like strategic relationships, constantly calculating value and keeping score. Then they're confused when their personal relationships feel hollow. The key is knowing which is which and operating accordingly. For strategic allies, the calculation is simple. They must provide more value than they consume. They must be reliable. They must serve your interests either directly or by serving interests aligned with yours. And they must not be positioned to betray you without severe cost. If these conditions aren't met, they're not really your ally. They're just someone you know who might help you sometimes if it's convenient for them. Real allies are bound by mutual interest, so clear and powerful that betrayal makes no sense. The strongest alliances aren't based on trust or affection. They're based on alignment of interest, so perfect that both parties succeed together or fail together. When you find someone whose success genuinely requires your success, you've found a real ally. When you find someone who benefits from your failure, you've found an enemy wearing a friendly mask. Most of your problems come from failing to distinguish between these two. There's also the matter of alliance maintenance. Alliances aren't static. They require periodic reinforcement. This means occasionally providing value, maintaining communication, demonstrating your continued utility, and ensuring the alliance still makes sense for both parties. The person who neglects their alliances discovers that when they need support, their allies have moved on. Finally, understand that all alliances are temporary. Circumstances change. Interests shift. What made sense yesterday might not make sense tomorrow. The person who clings to alliances past their useful life is dragged down by dead weight. You must be willing to end alliances cleanly when they no longer serve. Not with drama or betrayal, but with clear recognition that the alignment no longer exists. This seems cold until you realize that maintaining useless alliances costs you opportunities for useful ones. We've traveled through territory most people avoid, not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. These ideas clash with everything you've been taught about how the world should work, about fairness and justice and karma and virtue, about being good and waiting for your reward. But you already knew, somewhere deep down, that those stories weren't complete. You've seen good people destroyed. You've seen bad people succeed. You've seen that the world operates on principles that don't care about your morality or intentions. What we've explored here isn't about becoming ruthless. It's about becoming aware. It's about seeing the machinery that was always operating around you, but that you were trained not to notice. Power isn't evil, it's neutral. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for any purpose, but you can't use it effectively if you don't understand how it works. The person who understands these principles isn't automatically corrupt. They're simply operating with clear sight. They see what others miss. They understand what others deny. They act based on reality rather than wishes. And because of this, they're effective in ways that confuse those who still believe in fairy tales. This doesn't mean you abandon morality. It means you stop expecting morality to protect you. You stop believing that being good is enough. You stop waiting for the world to reward your virtue. Instead, you become powerful first. You establish your position. You create your security. You build your capacity for action. Then, from that position of power, You can be as moral as you want. You can use your power for good or evil, for creation or destruction, for helping or harming. But you must have the power first, because without it, your morality dies with you, unremembered and ineffective. The world belongs to those who understand how it actually works, not how it should work, to those who see clearly, act decisively, and maintain standards absolutely, to those who build power methodically and use it strategically. These aren't the people who talk about their goodness. They're the people who achieve outcomes, who shape reality, who leave marks that last. You can join them, or you can remain comfortable in your illusions, wondering why nothing ever works out the way you thought it would. The choice, as always, is yours. But now, you know what the choice actually is. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the book Sanctuary, and let the world of words inspire your soul.